Announced government's victory claims. And South Africa launches a national water and sanitation master plan. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour. In business, Kenya's state-owned firm lands a multi-million-dollar deal to offer geothermal drilling services in Ethiopia. And farmers in South Africa dare to grow world's hottest chilies. We start in Nigeria. Initial results released by the Independent National Electoral Commission shows that incumbent Muhammadu Buhari has taken an early lead in the polls. Buhari has won in 7 of Nigeria's 36 states, while his main challenger, Atiku Abubakar, took 4 states and the capital, Abuja. The party of Atiku Abubakar has, however, rejected the initial tallies.
We are here to just thank Almighty Allah for giving us this opportunity to win the election. 24 House of Representatives, 3 senatorial districts, and we are waiting for our genuine result of our future president, that is General Muhammadu Buhari.
This has been the mood in Nigeria's northern state of Kano. The area was billed as one of the key battlegrounds in this year's presidential elections. But Nigeria's main opposition party is crying foul.
All results currently being announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is incorrect, thus unacceptable to our party and the people. Secondly, officials of both President Buhari's government and All Progressive Congress APC, working with INEC officers, have tried to alter the course of history and disenfranchise our people through the cancellation and manipulation of figures for results already announced at polling units.
Saturday's election was expected to be Nigeria's hotly contested race since the end of military rule 2 decades ago. The incumbent is seeking a second term on an anti-corruption platform. His main challenger, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, has pledged above all to expand the role of the private sector. Whoever wins face an array of challenges, including a struggling economy, rattled by a decade-long battle with Islamist Boko Haram militants in the northeast. Official results are expected later in the week. Chombono, CGTN.
CGTN's Phil Haza joins us on the line from Abuja for more on Nigeria's election. Phil, President Muhammadu Buhari has taken an early lead as votes are being counted amid emerging disputes. What is the latest on this?
Oh, thank you. Right now, it's actually looking most likely tilting towards the incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari. He has won out of the 12 results or 12 states that the INEC has officially declared. He has won 7 out of the 12, while the PDP is looking at, winning 5 already as we speak. 3 of those states for the APC. So 12 states have been called so far: Osun State, Ondo State, and Ekiti State in the southwest, and then Abia, Enugu, Anambra, Ebonyi State in the southeast. The PDP, of course, won all the votes in the southeast, which was expected. It's just that what the challenge is the fact that the margin there wasn't so much. And then in the north central, Gombe, Kogi, Nasarawa, FCT. So far, it's looking, very positive for the incumbent president. In fact, the margin right now is about almost 800,000, and that's a lot of votes. The voter turnout in the southern part of the country was surprisingly very low as compared to the north. And in fact, the major state in the north has not yet been called by the INEC. So we're wondering if there's any hope already by the PDP.
And Phil, constitutionally, when are results supposed to be announced after voting?
Okay, so how it works is immediately after the voting process, collation is done at the different polling centers, which already most of that has been done. And then it's sent to the local government areas, from the local government areas to the state level, that's 36 states, and the federal capital. Now, all the state resident electoral commissioners are expected to travel to the capital with their results because it has to be officially declared here at the federal level by the INEC, where we've been here monitoring the results at the International Conference Center. And until those results are officially declared by the commissioner, the national chairman himself, they're seen as null and void or unofficial. But, you know, so far, we're expecting that today will be the last day for the rest of the states to be called, but that is if all their numbers tally, because we've had incidences where they come up to call the results and it doesn't tally, tally with what was collated at the local government level, for example, in Ondo State. But so far, we've had 12 states out of 36 states. It means we still have a long day ahead of us. It's possibly it might be till tomorrow or late into the night today.
All right, Phil Haza on the line there in Abuja. Thank you, Phil. Now, the African Union election observers and their European Union counterparts say the voting process in Nigeria was largely peaceful despite the hitches witnessed, but the postponement could have caused a lower voter turnout than expected.
African Union observers say Nigeria's election was generally peaceful. Nigerians are keenly following as results trickle in drips and drops. To them, this election is a turning point for Nigeria.
I'm anxious, very, very anxious. I want to see a winner, a clear winner, without any manipulation in any angle. I want to see clear winners. And if a clear winner emerge, then let us, the loser and everybody, let us cooperate with the person so that we can move Nigeria to the next level. That is my advice.
Too much delay could lead to compromise here and there because our system is not yet perfected. I did mean that we use electronic means to start transferring our result this year. There will be less manipulation. However, if the result could be collected as soon as possible, latest by today, so that by tomorrow we know the winner and lessen the tension in the land, that would be helpful.
The African Union Observer Mission has confirmed that the voting process was largely peaceful.
The 2019 elections took place in a generally peaceful environment. The mission notes the destruction of election materials, including over 4,000 smart card readers, ballot boxes, and voter registers in certain parts of the country, impacted on the timely conduct of the elections.
But having been postponed hours to D-Day last week, did not make the process all smooth. Delayed opening of polling centres are among some of the hitches that marked the election.
Serious operational shortcomings put undue burden on voters, but civil society played a positive role in enhancing accountability and transparency of the electoral process.
The contest is seen as one of the hottest since the end of decades of military rule in Africa's most populous nation. Both President Muhammadu Buhari and his closest rival Atiku Abubakar are senior citizens well in their 70s. It is not known when results will be announced, but it is clearly a battle fought by two elderly contestants whose destinies lie in the hands of millions, a majority of young voters of Nigeria. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
The First League of Arab States and the European Union Summit has concluded in the Egyptian resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Leaders from both regions have agreed to work on peaceful solutions for the conflicts in Palestine, Syria, Yemen and Libya. CGTN's Adil Mahroui reports.
49 countries from Europe and the Arab world gathered for the first summit that exclusively brings them together. This gathering aims to enhance cooperation between the two regions in all aspects.
I truly believe that it can be the beginning of a new chapter of cooperation between us. It is time to get real about partnership between the Arab world and Europe. We are confronted by many of the same challenges.
Leaders discussed solutions for regional crises. They renewed their support for a two-state solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and political approach for Yemen, Syria and Libya. Still, no new approaches to these conflicts have been announced. EU and League of Arab States have also agreed to increase cooperation in counter-terrorism efforts in the Middle East.
I believe more are convinced to create a common framework to deal with terrorism with a comprehensive approach. We've started to put ourselves on the real road to approach that issue. The road won't be simple or easy, and we won't accomplish and succeed in a short period of time.
While the summit tried to focus on the common grounds and the ties between Arabs and Europeans, human rights remained an issue fueling differences.
Never, under no circumstances, will I give up on freedom and democracy. And that is why I insisted that our summit declaration should include our commitment, common commitment, from both sides to the upholding of all aspects of international human rights law. And I am absolutely convinced, my whole life experience tells me that in this very context, dialogue is always much better than confrontation.
نحن ثقافتين مختلفتين. نحن منطقتين لهما.
We are two different cultures. Each region has its own circumstance. Priorities for European countries is to achieve welfare for their nations. Priorities in our countries is to protect it, to prevent it from falling apart, from collapsing, as you see in many countries nearby. This doesn't mean violate the law of human rights violations. I'm not saying to please the European side. I just want you to realize that one terrorist attack will make Sharm el-Sheikh, this city we are in, a ghost town.
It's still a major achievement to agree on a routine gathering between European and Arab leaders to talk openly about all topics. This League of Arab States European Union summit will be held every 3 years. The next meeting will be in Brussels in the year 2022. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Sharm el-Sheikh.
In Senegal, the country's opposition says the declaration of incumbent President Macky Sall's victory is premature, insisting on a runoff vote. Sall's camp has claimed victory in the Sunday's polls, in which his key rivals were barred from contesting. The ruling coalition says its candidate has only lost in 1 out of the 14 regions, according to preliminary results. The official results from the vote are expected by Friday midnight at the latest. If none of the 5 candidates wins more than 50%, a second round vote will be scheduled for late March. Wilkista Nyabwa is live for us in Dakar. For more on this, Wilkista, counting of votes and tallying is continuing. What is the latest?
Good afternoon, Peninah. Well, I can say that here in Dakar, it's simply a wait-and-see situation right now. Senegal went to the polls on Sunday. It is now Tuesday, and still no results, apart from the results that were declared by the Prime Minister on television, saying that President Macky Sall was leading with 57% of the votes and that he had won 13 out of the 14 regions. Yesterday, the Constitutional Court had a briefing where they did say that they told the Senegalese people to disregard all other votes, all other results that had not been given by the electoral body or by the Constitutional Court. They do say that they will be giving the results on Friday. And up until now, really, we're not really getting numbers from the Electoral Commission. We're not getting numbers from the body. It is difficult to know how many votes have been counted so far, how many were cast, and just how many more remain to be counted. But the Constitutional Court said it really affirmed the message that by Friday they will be able to give a final tally. So right now at this point, the Senegalese people are just waiting for those numbers to find out who is in the lead, whether there will be a runoff or whether there will be an outright winner. We do know that in order to be an outright winner in these polls, you have to score over 50% of the votes. Barring that, the two leading candidates will go into a runoff on March 24th. So right now, Senegal has really just gone back to business, waiting for those final results from the Constitutional Court and from the electoral body. Right now, it is not easy to say who is in the lead and who is trailing, and whether it is a big lead or whether it is a small gap in between. Peninah.
All right, Wilkista, thank you for that update. Wilkista Nyabwa live in Dakar. And this is Africa Live, coming up after the break. India strikes Kashmir militants in Pakistani territory. And South Africa launches National Water and Sanitation Master Plan.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
To South Africa now, and the country has launched a new National Water and Sanitation Master Plan to ensure future water supply. The plan, in part, is a response to the impacts of global warming and climate change. Some parts of South Africa recently emerged from one of the worst droughts in history. The popular tourist city of Cape Town almost ran completely dry after it missed 2 normal rain seasons. Experts are now warning that South Africa will run out of clean drinking water in 10 years. Naidu has this story.
The average South African uses 273 litres of water per day. This is 100 litres more than the global average. South Africa is a water-scarce country. By 2030, it will suffer a 3 billion litre deficit.
We want a national plan of water and sanitation because this crisis is exacerbated by climate change. Remember, it's a crisis of success of democracy. In South Africa, the infrastructure that is there was created for only 13% of the people. Now you've got 100% of the people sourcing water from the same sources.
There's close to 900 water treatment facilities across the country. Many are old and in need of maintenance, but they're critical in efforts to ensure water security. This is Cape Town's Bellville wastewater treatment facility.
If you don't manage wastewater itself, you don't bring it into a sort of a network, you know, where you can manage effectively in that. You know, you're going to have situations where that waste, that human waste, is going to be all over the show, which means it's going to have hygiene impacts, it's going to have environmental impacts, and if it has those type of impacts, you bring them together and you're going to find also you're going to have negative environmental, economical impacts.
Over 1 million people access the 20 megalitres of water from this plant. While the water is not safe to drink, it can be used for irrigation, machinery and construction. This limits the pressure on available clean drinking water. South Africa is the 30th driest country in the world. Ethiopia and Chad are listed in the top 3 water-scarce countries globally. Experts and industry role players recently gathered in Cape Town to share knowledge and cooperate on plans to limit the impacts of declining water sources.
In Ghana, we have the rural water system and then the urban water system. And the rural water system ranges between 62.3%, whilst the urban ranges within 70%. We're doing so much, but I think we need to do more.
You link action and you create the enabling environment. There is a monitoring system which gives the feedback and allows for replanning, reallocation of funds, and Rwanda is one of those countries which apply performance management.
Water shortages are already being felt in some parts of South Africa as drought conditions persist, and urgent response is needed to prevent a full-blown crisis. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Pakistan's foreign minister says the country's forces are fully prepared to respond to any Indian misadventures after New Delhi carried out airstrikes in the country on Tuesday. Shah Mahmood Qureshi made the remarks after the Indian Air Force crossed into Pakistani territory and launched the attacks on alleged terror camps. The Pakistani army has released pictures claiming Indian jets struck near the village of Balakot in Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. Islamabad says there were no casualties, though India claims a, quote, very large number of militants have been killed. The DPRK leader is in Hanoi on an official visit to Vietnam ahead of his second summit with the American president. Kim Jong-un is scheduled to meet Donald Trump on Wednesday and Thursday. Earlier, our reporter Han Peng caught a glimpse of Kim's convoy in the Vietnamese capital. Heading to Somalia, and the country's Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khaire has inaugurated a prison and court complex in the capital Mogadishu. The ceremony was attended by top federal government officials and international development partners. CGTN's Chaumgono has more.
The inauguration ceremony coincided with the 49th anniversary of the founding of Somalia's custodial corps. The new complex aims to facilitate the delivery of services in a conducive environment for judicial and prison staff as well as criminal suspects.
I hope this facility will benefit those who've been misled to doing wrong and will make the work of the judiciary and the custodial corps easier. We thank our development partners and we hope that we will work together in other projects similar to these ones, which are tangible and will benefit the people of Somalia.
The complex has been under construction since December 2015. Phase 1 of the project has been completed and comprises a courtroom, a 250-bed high-security prison block, and accommodation for judges, prosecutors, and lawyers. Work is already underway on the second phase of the project, involving the construction of more prison blocks and a second courtroom.
Without peace, stability, effective, accountable, and transparent institutions, and effective governance based on the rule of law, we cannot hope for true sustainable development for all.
We believe that the MPCC has transformational potential for Somalia when it comes to rule of law, countering terrorism and preventing violent extremism.
In addition to building the facility, technical assistance and training will be provided to judicial staff in efforts to ensure trials are free, fair and efficient.
Along with impressive buildings we have seen today, comes the technical assistance and advisory services and training support that the Chief Justice and Attorney General require to ensure that trials are fair and efficient, and that the Commission of Prisons requires to ensure his prisons are kept in secure and humane condition.
The current judicial reforms hopes to set new standards for human rights compliance in Somali prisons, facilitating peace and stability in the Horn of African nation. Chaumgono, CGTN.
In South Sudan, President Salva Kiir is scheduled to start a countrywide campaign to rally support for the implementation of a peace deal he signed with opposition groups last year. The peace agreement provides for the formation of a unity government in May this year. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
President Salva Kiir's tour starts in the Bahar Ghazal region in the northwestern part of the country. He is expected to travel by road and will be making stopovers in towns and other locations on his way. The peace agreement dictates that South Sudan's former rival groups form a unity government in 2 months' time. The parties to the agreement say representatives from all groups are now in South Sudan's capital to make preparation to form a new government. President Kiir's administration says for the peace deal implementation to succeed, it should be owned by the South Sudanese people.
The president will implore citizens to begin to heal their differences, end all forms of communal violence, and consolidate local peace.
South Sudan says it still needs more than $290 million to complete preparation to form a unity government, but many international donors say they would like to see more commitment from the peace parties before injecting more money into the process. The government says it wants each South Sudanese civil servant to forego a one-day's salary for the next 4 months to fund the peace deal. President Kiir hopes his tour of the country will help get support for the peace deal implementation. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says human rights are losing ground in the world. The UN chief was speaking at the Human Rights Council on Monday, but Guterres insists that he has not lost hope thanks to the progress made by powerful grassroots movements for social justice. CGTN's Brian Toussaint has more.
The Human Rights Council is holding its 40th session in Geneva. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres kicked off the high-level session with a somber speech on the efforts to protect and promote human rights worldwide.
And it was the human rights struggles and successes of others around the world that moved us to believe in change and to make that change happen. Human rights inspire and drive progress, and that truth is the animating spirit of this Council. It is the DNA of our organization's founding charter, and it is vital to addressing the ills of our world.
The United Nations is concerned about the ongoing conflicts around the globe. They have forced thousands to flee their homes.
Las crisis políticas.
Political crisis, wars, transnational organized crime, social exclusion and lack of access to justice demand adequate answers from this Council and from the entire international system for the protection of human rights.
We must re-establish the integrity of the international refugee protection regime and continue to work for common values and international cooperation to reassert rights and help protect people from ruthless traffickers, smugglers, and other predators.
Inequality and climate change are some of the issues that will be discussed by delegates.
How can any state's interest be advanced by policies that damage the well-being of all humans? And this is true of climate change. You may know the saying, if you think economic interests are more important than environment, try counting your money while holding your breath.
The current session of the Human Rights Council continues until March 22nd. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
In Zimbabwe, authorities have been pushing for dialogue to address the country's political, social and economic challenges. They say it could be the only viable way of resolving outstanding issues and transforming the Southern African nation. The country's economy is struggling amid a soaring cost of living. Recent months have seen several groups taking to the streets to express their concerns. A few weeks ago, President Emmerson Mnangagwa urged all candidates who participated in last year's elections to unite and agree on a framework that will steer Zimbabwe forward.
Dialogue will transform Zimbabwe. National dialogue is the key to conflict resolution. National dialogue is increasingly becoming a popular tool for conflict resolution and political transformation.
For the current principals to have things working, their best friend is the opposition. After all is said and done, the current president is Mnangagwa. You can't change it. So we have to talk with him, work with him until the status quo changes. That's the way forward. When there's a current guy in the government trying to do something, support the guy, work with the guy.
A look at our top stories. These are initial results released by Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission put incumbent Muhammadu Buhari ahead, having won in 7 of Nigeria's 36 states. The party of his main challenger, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, has however rejected the initial tallies. Senegal's presidential candidates say the declaration of incumbent President Macky Sall's victory is premature, insisting on a runoff vote. Sall's camp has claimed victory in Sunday's polls in which his key rivals were barred from contesting. The ruling coalition says its candidate has only lost in 1 out of the 14 regions, according to early results. The official results from the vote are expected by Friday midnight at the latest. If none of the 5 candidates wins more than 50%, a second-round voting will be scheduled for late March. The First League of Arab States and the European Union summit has concluded in the Egyptian resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. Leaders from both regions have agreed to work on peaceful solutions for the conflicts in Palestine, Syria, Yemen, and Libya. And South Africa has launched a new national water and sanitation master plan to ensure future water supply. The plan in part is a response to the impacts of global warming and climate change. Some parts of South Africa recently emerged from one of the worst droughts in history. The popular tourist city of Cape Town almost ran completely dry after it missed 2 normal rain seasons. And that's a wrap of our top stories this hour. Coming up in business news, Kenya's state-owned firm lands a multi-million-dollar deal to offer geothermal drilling services in Ethiopia, and traders cautiously welcome Zimbabwe's new currency.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
KenGen has secured a multi-million shilling contract to provide geothermal drilling services to the Ethiopian Electric Power. Kenya made its bid with its partners from China for the Horn of Africa project as a consortium and was awarded the contract in December last year. Ethiopia had tried to venture into geothermal development in efforts dating as far back as 1981, but was yet to make a commercial breakthrough. The World Bank, through a $76.8 million loan to the Ethiopian government, will finance the contract. South Africa is close to signing an interim trade agreement with Britain that would replicate arrangements with Europe. The deal would also ensure trade will not be disrupted in the event of a hard Brexit. But just a month ago, before Britain is due to leave the European Union, London has been trying to strike agreements with its trade partners around the world to replicate the terms it now has as a member of the bloc. South Africa is Britain's biggest partner in Africa, with trade worth over $11.7 billion in 2017. Metals and other commodities, cars and car parts, machinery, fruit and beverages are among the main traded goods. Without an agreement in place, that trade would become subject to higher tariffs that would hit key industries in both countries essentially overnight in the event of a hard or no-deal Brexit on March 29th. Still in South Africa, Eskom chair has described the state capture project as a well-executed plan. Making his closing remarks at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, Jabu Mabuza said the project was planned and implemented by a range of players. Mabuza's list includes several prominent business people and several senior executives within the power utility. This came to light in a series of emails between the Eskom executives and Salim Essa, a known Gupta associate.
As we have seen in the various emails that we've demonstrated, that started to not only indicate the interaction with the businessman, as in Salim Issa, it also, in that email, he makes the point that the game changer was changing the executive leadership. And that game changer spirit and ethos should be allowed to permeate and be embedded in the organization at levels below. So we also need to see this in the context of Eskom's size. I indicated on Friday, Chair, that if Eskom was a listed company, Eskom would have been number 2, if not number 1, in its size if you just look at their revenue. The revenue of Eskom is around 190 billion. What they buy, what they spend is, if you just look at coal, is just shy of 100 billion.
A week after the Zimbabwean government introduced a new currency, there are doubts over its viability. Banks and businesses have been avoiding trading in the new real-time gross settlement dollars on the basis that it does not make business sense.
Zimbabwe struggles to convince doubters as it launches a new currency. Godfrey Chinani runs a car parts shop in downtown Harare. As he serves his clients, deep down, he is a worried man. Since the introduction of the real-time gross settlement dollar by the government, he feels like his clients will no longer afford his goods.
When we started, it was that dollarization era, and we were using the multi-currency, mostly the rand and the US dollar. The business was flowing much better because you know, our market, their salaries were in forex as well. They got rands, they got US dollars, and then we had there was no need to make any calculations. What people just came and buy, and then we used the forex to go and order our stuff because we get most of these items from South Africa.
He is not alone. Investors in Zimbabwe do not trust this currency that was launched last week. Although many welcome this move, they are now expressing doubts over the government's ability to sustain the fiscal and monetary discipline that should keep inflation in check.
I think we must try this route of adopting the rand. I think if we can adopt the rand until such a time when everything is stable, until such a time when it is right to introduce our own currency. But otherwise, with industries closed and with our economy being as informal as it is right now, I don't think it's the right thing to do all these RTGS things, but to adopt the rand.
Zimbabwe's currency problems have undermined President Emmerson Mnangagwa's quest to win back investors. Inflation already reached 57% in January, the highest in 10 years. And many Zimbabweans fear a return of the 2009 hyperinflation that hit the southern African nation. Civil servants are already demanding a pay raise to reflect the economic situation.
These days, you know, the people, they are getting RTGS as their salaries. They are getting the bond. And when we convert it to rand and US dollar, it's nothing. So it has really affected us because people have less disposable income.
Authorities have pledged to defend the value of the new currency. But for now, businessmen like Godfrey, and most Zimbabweans indeed, are not sitting easy. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
In Moscow, 12 Russian companies have signed a deal to be the first of 30 factories to move into the new Russian industrial city to be constructed in the Suez Canal in Egypt. It will be the second industrial city after the Chinese one, which has been around for a few years now, also at the Suez Canal. Yasser Hakim has more.
The Russian government calls it the Sun City. Over an area of 5.25 square kilometers, the Russian industrial city in Egypt is the largest one outside of Russia. The cost is expected to reach $7.5 billion.
There are 50 Russian factories that have signed MOUs to invest in the industrial city, but the companies that have actually signed the final contracts are 30. The first phase will include railway carts production, pharmaceuticals, solar panels, fertilizers. The second phase will include vehicle production plants, steel and cement.
The deal to establish the Russian industrial city was signed during Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to Cairo in 2018. This industrial city will open the door for the inflow of badly needed foreign investments and technology. This will support the developing economy and boost employment opportunities in Egypt. For Russia, Egypt could be the springboard to the regional market.
Russia wants Egypt to be its gateway to the African market, which is a huge market of over 1.28 billion people, including 100 million in the Egyptian market alone. Egypt is also a member of several economic blocs and free trade agreements like the COMESA, the African Free Trade Area, as well as the Eurasian Free Trade Area with Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia.
The Russian industrial city will be constructed over 3 phases. The first phase will include 50 companies and should be ready by 2022. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
A young South African entrepreneur has defied the odds and got his fashion label off the ground. Tsikelelo Solani moved to Johannesburg from the Eastern Cape in the hope of finding success, but the city of gold was unkind to him. It wasn't long before he found himself living on the streets, struggling to survive. But Solani never gave up. He now runs his fashion studio from a container in Johannesburg and dreams of one day building an empire. CGTN's Julie Shire visited Solani's studio in Hillbrow.
Johannesburg is home to nearly 5 million people. Many South Africans and other migrants flock to the vibrant city in search of work and business opportunities. But it can be tough for those starting out. Tsikelelo Solani learned the hard way when he moved from Port Elizabeth to launch his fashion label Shaka Kosa.
I was shocked. I had challenges with rent because at that time I was studying. I ended up sleeping in shelters. Then in shelters I became a victim. People started stealing my stuff from being in the shelter. I live in abandoned houses. From abandoned houses, I live in parks.
But there was no turning back. Solani continued his craft on the street so he could buy food, and then his luck turned.
My mate lady who bought my products was living in England. From then on, piece by piece, things started changing, and people coming bought from me. Mostly people that were coming from outside Africa started buying from me. From then on, things changed.
The crafty fashion designer now runs his studio from the same neighborhood where he was once homeless.
And it is in this tiny container in Hillbrow where the magic happens, and we find these unique bow ties that have traveled as far as London.
This one I call it a biker bow tie. Sometimes I think of like objects that are happening for inspiration. One time I look at a butterfly. I was inspired by the butterfly, and then I started coming up with a bow tie that looks like a butterfly, two in my eyes. So it's something like that. Nature, assists me.
The aspirational designer is now focusing on growing his label. But Solani had to resort to a full-time job to do so. He is optimistic, however, that his break into the mainstream market will soon come. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
A new mobile technology known as WeFarm is helping farmers in rural Uganda to share their best farming practices in real time. Over 700 smallholder farmers are now able to send and receive free messages on the platform. Here's CGTN's Isabel Nakiria with the details.
Checking on the prevailing market prices, Henry Damulira markets his onions on the SMS platform, and he's able to get the answer in real time.
We don't have market in the nearby places. To save time and transport, I may ask a question on the platform. Please, who can advise me where can I sell my onions? Or what's the price as per now? Instead of me going to the market to spend time and money.
For 3 years, Henry has farmed on his 2-acre land in Mpigi, about 40 kilometers outside Kampala. Henry grows a range of crops including cassava, onions and tomatoes. Henry's onion harvest has been good thanks to the WeFarm SMS platform, where he got information to improve his yields. But he will have to wait for a few more weeks for the market price to go up before he sells. Like Henry, many farmers in Uganda live in remote areas without internet access and find it difficult to access information on best farming practices. In this way, smallholder farmers continue to suffer losses.
For me, I thought that when you have a hoe and you have a land, you have your money, you can go to market and buy seeds, then you can sow and wait for the results. I did that, but I didn't get the results. I got zero.
The low-cost solution is now making farming more productive and profitable by using basic funds. farmers get to know the best markets and source the best seeds and fertilizers.
We select farmers depending on their farming activity. If a farmer is growing cassava and is asking a question about cassava, we send to other farmers growing cassava. Then we get an answer, we send back to the farmer who sent the question.
The World Bank estimates about 70% of Ugandans are employed in the agriculture sector. Yet they lack access to markets and the cost of transport is too high due to impassable roads during the rainy season. The social enterprise We Farm says if thousands of farmers like Damulira are empowered with farming knowledge, Uganda's agriculture produce can be boosted. Isabel Nakiria, Mpigi, Central Uganda.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. Farmers in South Africa dare to grow world's hottest chilies.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Wolfgut Restaurant in South Africa has just made an international mark by winning Restaurant of the Year title at inaugural World Restaurant Awards in Paris. The new accolade has put a stamp on the restaurant's position in the international culinary market. The restaurant, which specializes on seafood, pays homage to the region's past indigenous inhabitants. Shareholders and stakeholders have welcomed the new rise to stardom.
In our category, which was the off-map destination for restaurants not in a city, in a remote location, there are restaurants that we literally hero worship, and we were like, this is insane. We can't believe that we're even considered in the same realm as, you know, really well-known, well-established international restaurants.
I believe that the food is amazing. I understand they get everything that they cook from around here. They go foraging. And I just think it's wonderful that a place like Paternoster could have a restaurant like that that's the best in the world. It's unbelievable.
So in South Africa, a new wave of chili aficionados in Cape Town are attempting to grow the world's hottest chilies known as the Super Hots. CGTN's Travers Andrews reports.
It's called the Carolina Reaper, and it's a chili so strong it's a current record holder for the hottest chili in the world. Well, that's at least for the time being. Because the plant is part of a much broader movement of professional and backyard horticulturists and enthusiasts who are attempting to grow and harvest the Super Hots. A list of a dozen or more capsicums that are specially grown for their fiery heat. The Cape's balmy summertime conditions provide the ideal growing environment for these chilies, which may vary in size, color and shape, but they all hit with the same punch.
The super hot varieties, some people prefer certain varieties over others. Some they say have a very floral taste. It's just unadulterated heat, where others like the Reaper and the Brain strain have this nice sweet taste. There's no real heat in the beginning, and you think, this is not too bad, and then it's like the slow burn, and it just creeps up on you.
The Carolina Reaper is currently one of the most famous chilies in the world, due to the public hype about its strength and its bright red fruit, contrasted by its green plant, serves as a warning to all. The chilies are measured also in Scoville heat units, with the higher the number, the higher the heat. The ghost pepper coming in at number 2 and the 7-pot douglas not far behind, but still one remains supreme.
The jalapeno for chili poppers, for example, is 10,000 Scoville units, whereby all the super hots, which the majority of what I grow is super hots, they're from 800,000 to 2.2 million.
And at 2.2 million Scovilles, the Reaper is not far off in heat from police-grade pepper spray. But enthusiasts are still not content with even that strength and are attempting to create their own cultivars of designer super hot chilies by way of cross-pollination. Of course, there are certainly only few palates that are brave enough to withstand the heat of one of these super hot chilies. And for the rest, there are food markets, where Johnny Exberg hot sauces can be found. We have the largest selection of rare and exotic sauces produced from locally sourced super hots.
What we do is we taste the fresh pepper, the fresh chili first, and then we try to identify the natural flavors of that chili. And using fruit in combination with the chili, we create a flavor profile where you do get huge flavor complementing the huge heat.
Ultimately, the chilies and sauces are meant to complement the food, not destroy it. And it seems more and more Capetonians are finding a newfound taste and appreciation for their heat. But it's just a matter of time until the next world record holder gets discovered. And that might just be here, in someone's backyard. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And ahead in sports news. Uganda Paralympic athletes prepare for the 2020 Tokyo Games qualifiers.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.